Are you ready to use a virtual assistant? Today on the Daily Ish Show.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0, ignition, liftoff.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Daily Ish Show, a show not just for rental housing providers, but for anybody, any business owners, or really pretty much anybody out there that's looking to get more white space on their calendars and control of their calendar. How awesome would that be? Not just focused on income generation, but also on life output. It is really good to see you. My name is Mark Dolfini, your host and landlord coach. It is good to see you. So we are going to be talking about, are you ready to use a virtual assistant? Well, this is a topic that I run into quite often, not just with my coaching clients, but with lots of different people. And I would make the argument, and I'm about to make the argument today, that there's going to be a lot of different people out there that can use a virtual assistant, whether they think they can use one or not. And I'm not going to get into the how-tos because that will just depend a little bit in terms of how best to use it. But I'm going to give you a couple of different ideas in terms of where it is where you're at in life, whether you're a business owner, maybe you're a business or you're self-employed, right? That's different from being a business owner. If you don't think so, I'll tell you the difference here in a minute. Maybe you're a busy executive, or maybe you're a stay-at-home person. But either way, if you are, I can make an argument for really anybody that can use a virtual assistant, could use a helping hand, because quite frankly, we're not great at everything. And it's when we're trying to be good at things that are outside of our skill set, that's when that's when the wheels come off the wagon. So let's talk about this a little bit. So are you ready to use a VA or a virtual assistant? Well, let's start with the self-employed individual. So I don't know how many self-employed individuals we have out there. If you are a self-employed individual, go ahead, raise your hand high. I'd like to see you out there. Go ahead and say, yes, I'm proud and self-employed. Well, that's great. Well, I want you to start changing your mindset right away, because I don't want you to be self-employed. The whole point of, the irony behind me being a landlord coach, even though I'm coaching other people outside of the real estate industry now, I don't want them to be landlords. I don't want them to. I don't want them to be self-employed. I really don't even want them to be business owners. I really want them to be investors, so they can truly get that passive income and start to enjoy the white space on their calendar, be intentional about that. But that's a whole other show. So tonight, let's talk about self-employed. So if you are a self-employed individual, what that does when you start working a virtual assistant. So let me first define a virtual assistant. A virtual assistant is somebody that would pretty much do whatever tasks you could imagine that does not require someone's physical presence. And if you really think about it, in terms of where we're at these days, there are not a lot of jobs that require someone's physical presence. Unless you're turning a wrench or doing a specific task on a physical thing, it's not really all that necessary. There's lots of things that are being done now remotely, and there's many times someone's answering a phone for a large corporation, and you hear dogs barking and kids laughing in the background, and they're working from home, right? And we've just come to accept that as a society. Well, you know what? This has been going on for years, especially overseas. There's people who work in the Philippines. There's people who work in India who are doing virtual assistant work for Americans and have been doing it for well over a decade. So this is not a new thing. But the problem that I see with self-employed individuals, and this is not a business owner. You haven't made the transition over to business owner. You are the one who's doing all the doing. You're the chief cook and bottle washer. Everything flows through you, and you're handling all four parts of your business, right? All four parts would be the marketing, the lead gen function, right? The sales function, the operational function, whatever the business does, right? And of course, the accounting function. So you're trying to do all four of those functions, and being self-employed, most often one or more of those definitely is going to fall off. Usually it's the accounting that falls off first, but you're getting more business in, sales happens pretty quickly. You're doing the operation, but then your billing's kind of a mess, so you're not really sure where you're at financially. If that sounds remotely familiar, this is not judgment, it's confession, because that's exactly what I was doing for years until I figured things out. Now, I'm overseeing, I oversee a bunch of different businesses now. So it's different for me now. So because I figured this stuff out, I can't possibly think that I'm going to do all this stuff and do it consistently over time. I just know that I won't. So, and if you are doing all of those things, then you're constraining yourself for growth. You're constraining yourself by capacity. And I would also argue that you're not valuing your time highly enough. Because if you're, let's say for argument's sake, that you're doing all four of those things well, right? As a self-employed individual. So you're doing all four of those things and you're doing all four of those things well. And you're like, you know what? I'm completely fine with my, you know, $500,000 business, which I net, $50,000 at the end of each year. I'm totally fine. I don't want any more of that. That's fine. But keep in mind, I would also argue that you're probably not valuing your time highly enough. Follow me where I'm going here. So let's pretend that for argument's sake, that you might have to pay a virtual assistant roughly $35 a week to handle your books, which I do, by the way. So I'm paying someone $35 a week to handle my books. And, that's roughly an hour's worth of bookkeeping, which does some light billing stuff and things like that. Now, again, for a $500,000 business, that's not a lot of bookkeeping, and that's about what would be appropriate. So if it takes you much longer to do that because you're good at the operational function of your business, whatever the operation is, and your billing rate is $100 an hour. So your billing rate's $100 an hour when you're in the operational function of your business. Yet you're doing work that you could pay someone else $35 an hour to do. Even if it took you the same hour to do, right? It's actually costing you $65 an hour because you're spending time doing the accounting when you should be doing revenue production. And I hear, well, I do it at night when, I'm sitting on the couch. Yeah, but that's an hour that I promise you your spouse would probably want you to be more engaged, or an hour that you could spend sitting and staring at the sky or doing anything else, right? This is all I'm saying is you're not valuing your free time highly enough. So that's why I say it's this opportunity cost that you have where you're doing this other activity where your billing rate may be $100 an hour, but you are doing jobs that are, sometimes $10 or $12 an hour. The problem gets very, very ridiculous. So that's why I say, so those self-employed individuals, I would much recommend, and you can get anybody, you can get a virtual assistant to do most of those functions, right? Whether it's lead generation, marketing, they can do the outbound marketing for you and Facebook posts and things like that. They can do sales. They can actually close sales for you. There's virtual assistants who do that as well. There are, again, depending on the type of business that you have, if you have whatever fulfillment you have, they can help with fulfillment. They can handle emails for you, take the administrative workload off of you for the operational function. And then for the accounting function, they can do bookkeeping and accounting and cut checks and pay bills and all that sort of stuff. So that's why I say the self-employed individuals where this is directed towards mostly. And it's pretty interesting when you can get pretty creative with it. All right, so let's shift from you are a small business owner now because you are now time wealthy, or you've got a little bit more time and you're starting to delegate stuff, right? This is probably the biggest thing that a virtual assistant can teach you, is that it teaches you how to delegate things, delegate tasks that are not really worth your time. And also, you also start to eliminate tasks. So you realize the tasks that you were doing doesn't make the task any more important just because you give it to someone else. So all of a sudden you get really good at eliminating tasks and delegating tasks, and then even tasks that you could possibly automate. So anyway, so here we are. Now we're a business owner. Now as a business owner, okay, now what are some things that you can do here? Well, now you've got, say, several people working for you. Maybe you've got a virtual assistant doing the bookkeeping, right? And you have a busy season. Most businesses have a busy cycle, right? They have a busier time. Well, now you can hire an additional virtual assistant to fill in where you might be weak, or maybe back up the strengths, fill in where you're weak. And you don't necessarily have to hire another individual, another person to bring onto payroll, which is another possibility or another strength, is that you're paying them, what you pay them is what you pay them. There's no work comp, there's no insurance, there's nothing to worry about, as long as you're just basically paying them. You're paying them direct expenses. Now, again, are they a little bit more expensive than what you would pay a worker? Yes, absolutely. But you got to keep in mind, you're only using them on demand. So this is really cool. So there's a company that I reference. I'm going to go ahead and put this up here for real quick. Boson Solutions. This is not a commercial for them. This is just who I happen to use. But I love these guys at Boson Solutions because they fill in the blanks whenever I need something, right? If I'm having someone doing some social media stuff for me, and then I need to shift over to doing some other stuff like, they're doing marketing for me, and I need to shift over to have some other things like bookkeeping for me. That bookkeeping, they actually do bookkeeping for me. I have a chief of staff that actually works through them, and that helps me keep all my emails organized and everything, keeps me moving in the right direction with all these different things. This is really something that they can help with. Okay, so I love using those. And the nice thing about them, if they're answering phones, they only charge you. I think their billing rate's 30 an hour, right? 30 or 35 an hour. But if they're answering a phone, you're not paying $30 for someone to answer a phone. You're paying them to answer the phone, complete the task, they hit stop. So if it's a 5-minute task, that comes out to what, like $4, right? Well, that to me is a no-brainer. So that's how they charge. So don't get scared off by the rate. Look at the value that you're getting. So this shifts over from, okay, so we talked about the self-employed. We talked about business owners. Now let's talk about you busy executives who are probably not even you've already tuned out from this video, but maybe for those of you who can actually talk to your busy executives and go, hey, maybe have you considered a virtual assistant? Because this dude on Facebook talked about virtual assistants. Well, the whole thing about executives, it's also kind of neat because they can help with life tasks. So for the executives who have a lot going on in their lives, there was an article that I read recently about a busy executive who actually had their virtual assistant, listen here, find a new apartment, hire the movers, pack up all their stuff, move it to the new location, and basically move all their stuff in, hang all the pictures back up, and the only thing that person had to do was bring the lease to them to sign. That was it. And they did all that virtually. They didn't even meet in person. So how cool is that they actually negotiated all that stuff for them? And again, they don't care. Like for them, it wasn't that important hey, I trust you. This is my parameters. This is exactly what I'm looking for. I don't want to spend hours and hours trying to find this stuff. I trust you. Go ahead and make the decision. So they empowered that virtual assistant to make all those choices, which I thought was really, really cool. So, and let's shift this over, lastly, to the stay-at-home individual, stay-at-home parent, right? So you're running the most important business ever, and that's the home, either staying at home, running the household, raising kids, whatever it is you're doing there. So you've got a lot of good things that a virtual assistant could help you with, right? Not just paying bills and doing that sort of stuff, but obviously, if they're an executive, they can schedule travel, they can book hotel rooms, they can book flights, schedule car rentals and things like that. Well, on the same thing for a stay-at-home parent, it's very, very similar, where it's booking doctor's appointments or reminding you of doctor's appointments or reminding you that you haven't been to the dentist in 6 months, which reminds me, I got to call my dentist. So, but things like that, but my virtual assistant, actually, she did remind me. That's something that my virtual assistant does. Like, hey, when's the last time you call your dentist? And I was like, yep, going to call him, but I didn't want to. So I have to do that. But that's the thing that my virtual assistant reminds me of because I haven't been there in a while. So these are the sorts of things where they can impact lots of different life things that you need to get done. And they can remind you of all sorts of stuff that needs to get done. Making sure that, recurring things that you're supposed to do. Hey, when's the last time you had your will checked? When's the last time that you had your life insurance policies you reviewed? When's the last time you've had, all of these different life things that come up, right? When's the last time you met with a financial advisor? When's the last time you met with your CPA, which is ideal, not just at tax time, but probably maybe in October. So if there is any big icebergs looming over the horizon, that you can possibly do something to limit your tax liability. All these sorts of things that you should be doing that can be done and reminded by a virtual assistant. And they oftentimes are much more organized than people who are self-employed and business owners and executives who have so many different things going on, and they can certainly keep some aspect of your life more organized and more intentional. So that is all I have for today. I want to go ahead and give a quick shout out to the folks over at Boson Solutions. They help me out with so many different things, and they actually do some work for some of my coaching clients. If you would like to join the discussion, the Time Wealthy VIP Lounge, we just go ahead and click on the show notes and go ahead and subscribe to that, and we'll get you into the discussion. And that is all I have for today. I don't have any major weekend plans. I'm not 100% sure what we're doing, to be honest with you. I was going to try to do some work outside, but it doesn't look like the weather is going to cooperate. But anyway, that's all I have for today. Be sure to place a value on your free time, because if you don't, someone else will. But most important, there is no amount of money that will make time irrelevant. Have a great rest of your day, guys. I'll see you next time.